said I was going to provide a picture of before and after of a school ecology. And I problematized the school ecology in terms of organizational structures and mechanisms and roles and physical infrastructure. And then I had a meeting with Nancy today, and I had one with her 2 weeks ago. And somehow I want to tie conflict into this. So what does the ecology look like before and after? I think that's this word here, reification of an emergent education technology role. Oh my goodness, it's all a mess. This is the new title for something. We just came up with that title today. And Nancy had a quick look at the manuscript that I wrote, and forget about that manuscript. It was helpful. I'm going to revise it. And I'm going to revise it hopefully in this way. The slides are not done because my thoughts are not done. So just going back to this pedagogical technologist, the super category is perhaps an emergent educational technology role, and based on the literature, we're getting roles that can be hyper-specialized or paraprofessional, becoming more general, encompassing more skills, or focusing on one particular skill. And they're emergent, so there's limited coherence, and the idea of ecology and complexity. These roles exist in changing educational environments. Okay, reification. And that I associate with a community of practice framework where people practice and they negotiate meaning, and what is produced from these negotiations are reified products. They can be abstract and physical that congeal and organize the experience. So that's actually what the ecology looks like. It looks like this, and then it looks like that. But what we're looking at is the reification. Conflict. Misalignment of beliefs, values, and assumptions. Okay. I wanted to provide a very broad picture of the school ecology before diving into a particular part of that ecology. And it's a large school. I'm focusing particularly on one school on one campus. In fact, several grades and 24 classes in that one school. That was the original pedagogical digital literacy coach domain. So that was the fundamental niche of this digital literacy coach. That's the job title for this specific pedagogical technologist. And the school, one of the big 3 in Singapore. It's a private school. It has great operational flexibility. It's super international. Okay, and this is a very specific timeline for this digital literacy coach role. And Nancy and I were kind of hashing it out at our meeting a few hours earlier. And I feel like these are very important things to contextualize what I'm about to present. So there have been significant changes in this school over several years. And in year 0, the school had an ICT subject. And it was a part of the IB primary years program. And they had ICT subject teachers. And they also had a math teacher named Sam, and Sam is one of the digital literacy coaches. And he was a math teacher. He wasn't an ICT subject teacher. And then he had colleagues who were the ICT subject teachers. And then the school went into a transition period, year one, where they still had ICT subject and a PYP, primary years curriculum. But they were looking ahead to getting rid of their ICT subject teaching. They still had ICT subject teachers in year one for this ICT subject. But now, Sam had become the ICT subject teacher because one of the ICT subject teachers had left the school. And there was conflict in him becoming the ICT subject teacher, and I will explore that some other time. The following year, the school actually gets rid of its ICT subject teaching. Still has the primary years curriculum, and they call their whole school technology integration plan iLearn. And they don't have ICT subject teachers anymore. They have digital literacy coaches, these pedagogical technologists. But even in the first year of DLCs, there's divergence in practices because there are two DLCs, and they end up doing very, very different things. And it's Sam and a colleague, same piece. Okay, the following year, the school undergoes another great transition. They get rid of the IB PYP, and they develop their own school-based curriculum. They still have this whole school technology implementation plan called iLearn. Now there's greater divergence as Sam's colleague leaves the school. Then another teacher in the school becomes the digital literacy coach. She's called Susan. And these DLCs have more in common in their practices. Nonetheless, Sam acquires a new title, a new role in the school as well. In addition to being officially the DLC, he acquires the possibility and also the pay of an additional role. So this is, I don't know how best to present this information, but I feel like that's important to contextualize what's about to happen. And this is more contextualization of what I just presented. The rationale for all of these things. Okay, so I want to, in this table, I'm presenting the changes here. Okay, so what are the changes in year two? And I'm comparing what Sam actually, I'm comparing the DLC baseline, the job description, the original job description, with what Sam does, but in addition to what he does. Oh, in addition to the baseline, this is what Sam actually does in addition to this. I have not completed this table. So originally he was assigned grade levels and belonged to this group. Ultimately, through his practices, he gets himself also assigned to this organizational structure.
So you mentioned there is this colleague.
Yes.
So does the role of that colleague, is that role the same as the DLC baseline?
I haven't gone back to that data yet. So in the time since we had our meeting, I was just looking at the job description. And it's really cool because Sam shared the Google Doc that had him and his superiors discussing the job description, going back and forth. So I can see the original job description. I can see the concessions from his superiors. I can also see his additional arguments. So that's how I actually developed this table. I didn't compare Sam with his colleague yet. I haven't actually looked at that yet. And I haven't compared Sam with this other role too, but that's important as well. Again, this is incomplete. So the DLC is supposed to attend these mechanisms and meetings. And Sam ultimately changes a lot of them. So for example, the tech mentors meet twice weekly, and he does that, but he also expands it. So ultimately, he changes the Tech Mentors program and increases the number of Tech Mentors. Team time was ad hoc. So he met grade level teachers when necessary, all of them. That's the baseline. What he ended up doing is he ended up meeting all of them regularly twice a week. He was supposed to meet certain people, certain roles, at certain designated times. Before a new unit would launch, he would have to meet this role, and this role. But what he ended up doing was he just ended up attending all of their meetings. And that was a part of him getting assigned to be a part of this unit. Because he got himself assigned a part of this unit, he attended all of this unit's meetings. So it wasn't before a unit, it was just all the time. So he made all these different kinds of changes to the mechanisms, and he also created mechanisms as well. And I've mentioned that before in the last time. So in the job description, he's supposed to work closely with these people. And he argues he does that, but he also mentioned that he not only works closely with these roles, but also certain administrative staff, particularly the secretaries. That was actually a big point of contention. He trains the secretaries because no one else trains them. So he also contacts other staff as well. And things that he's supposed to do, he's supposed to work at grade level and within the grade, class level innovation. He's saying he's very, very special because he does school level planning. And many other things. Like he lists out all the kinds of things that only he does. Yeah. I need to kind of figure out how to present that. So ultimately, the outcome of all of this is that Sam's job description actually changes. He gets concessions in his job description, and he also gets an additional responsibility point. He gets a pay raise. And the other DLC does not. So again, this is the result of these divergent practices. That his job description changes. They're still both called the DLC. His job description changes, and he gets more pay. And now this is the kind of, I'm trying to locate the conflict. I have to talk about conflict too, right? And part of the conflict is recognition. Recognition, Sam feels that he is the one who, when he negotiates at, again, school level, he gets people in the school. The school's really big to remember the primary school on the campus. Because there's so many schools and so many campuses, someone remember the primary school, his primary school. The conflict, too, in changing the job description and changing the pay was that no one actually knew what he was doing. Because he wasn't doing this. He was doing everything else. So part of the conflict is trying to capture that, his administrators. How do they, there's information asymmetry.
So I think when you talk about conflict, then, I mean, one is who is he in conflict with?
Yes.
I mean, one is the nature of the conflict.
Yes.
So you probably need to look at that because, I mean, for example, he was trying to train the admin staff. Maybe the admin staff might not want to be trained.
Yes. So
I think so. Then it could be the same. I mean, the same conflict, but it could play out with different parties in different ways.
Yes, agreed.
So you might want to capture that.
Yes, I agree. Again, let's not think it's total war. There are periods of conflict and cooperation. He's in conflict with superiors. At year 2, he's in conflict with the other DLC as well. And there's conflict with that DLC in other roles as well. And this is just one kind of comment that he makes. So he was in conflict with his superiors, basically regarding the pay and trying to create information symmetry. Okay, I haven't actually gotten to diagramming year 3 yet, but there's really one massive change. So the literacy coaches are another role in the school. And in year 2, Sam was arguing, my job is the same as theirs. And they get pay, and I do not get pay. So what's going on here? I either get a pay raise, or you take away their pay. And in year 3, after this conflict with his superiors, and the superiors don't want to provide such pay, the superiors articulate that the real difference between this role and the DLC role is the teaching role. So the administrators are like, okay, well, if you guys teach, just like these literacy coaches teach, you get the pay. And Sam and Susan, the new DLC, say, oh, yes, of course, we'd like to do that. So their role changes again. They are back in the classroom. After a year away from the classroom, they're back in the classroom, and they get the additional pay. Okay, going back to this idea of reification, part of the conflict is Sam going beyond his job description. And because he's going beyond the description, no one else knows what he's doing. Part of the reason why no one else knows what he's doing is because he's going everywhere. He's not in one location. He's all over the school organizationally. That's a part of the role, his belief, part of the role. Something that I find is, again, reification is very complex. The job title, the job description, the pay, they're all interrelated. Not only that, but this role, this DLC role, is interrelated with all the other roles in the school. So by negotiating the meaning of a digital literacy coach, what Sam and Susan ultimately did was they negotiated their meaning in terms of the meaning of other roles. So they were always comparing their job with those jobs. How are we the same or not the same as teachers? How are we the same or not the same as literacy coaches? How are we not the same or the same as the principals? So in negotiating and reifying one role, this digital literacy coach, this was actually negotiating, reifying all the other roles in the school. Something that's also important to know about this kind of ecology is that it's still developing. And the reification of a digital literacy coach is also the reification of other elements of the environment, including the mechanisms. So I need to kind of qualify several things. When Sam got his job description changed and got his pay raise, when he was in conflict with his superiors about this, all of this happened in the shadows. That is, Sam just pursued his superiors informally through emails and face-to-face discussion to actually create this change, the change to his pay and change to his salary. So it wasn't transparent, and it wasn't very public either. The changes to his pay and his job description, well, they were exclusive and exceptional for him, and no one else really knew about it. In the same way, the following year, this change is only for Sam and Susan and one other DLC. The school, again, is very large, and they have many digital literacy coaches in the schools and the campuses. But only for 3 digital literacy coaches in the entire school operation do they acquire a teaching load, an extra pay raise. And again, the negotiations for this also happened informally, and it was not public and transparent. So Sam and Susan kept dogging, going after their superiors, saying, hello, why is there a difference between us? And it was resolved informally. The superiors say that it could be applied to other DLCs were they to approach them. So the school actually doesn't really have formal mechanisms for resolving these discrepancies in job description and remuneration. And because of that, you can have all of these exceptions. I mean, there's a correlation between the exceptions and the informality and lack of transparency. And I think that's about it. That is where I'm starting. Okay, thanks.
There's one. Okay, when you talk about the reification, I'm not entirely sure that the role description is it doesn't fit into the general expectation of what a reification generally is. And so in this case, I'm not entirely sure whether you. We talk about, how do you illustrate this DLC's Sam's sort of impact and contribution. We need to think about it. But then, obviously, it would be. I mean, you sort of convinced me that it would be useful, or it is important to look at the role changes. I mean, so the role changes as a negotiation really actually, I mean, if you look at the species, I mean, if you look at the DLC as a species, then the species has been changing.
Yes.
Right? And it's taking up a different niche.
Yes.
Okay? So that would, so you can argue that the role changes actually is a good way to encapsulate, the kind of changes in the school.
Yes.
But then you might not, if you wish, I mean, of course, you still need to be working on it. You might refer to it as some form of reification, but it would not be. But it would be a very unorthodox kind of. I mean, it's not a normal kind of reification, because usually reifications should be something, an artifact which by itself actually propagates, certain things, right? So you were saying that the this this school has more than 3 DLCs.
Yes.
But then this role specification is only staying within this small group. Now, and then you argue that that should become more public. In one sense, yes. If this, I mean, the role supposedly, the changed roles of the DLC over time should illustrate how, they should be better species, more competitive species in terms of the functioning, in achieving certain kinds of outcomes. And if the other parts, if the other parts of the school, if the job descriptions were also similarly changed,
yes,
then it should be better, isn't it?
Yes.
Right? Now, why hasn't, has it, do you know for sure that it hasn't changed?
What hasn't changed?
Say, for example, the upper schools or the lower
yes.
schools, you're looking at the,
yes.
at the middle years. What about the other parts of the school? Well, they haven't made a public discussion.
Yes.
Right? That you know.
Yes, and there.
But then even Sam may not know.
Yes, and that's a part of the school environment. What are the kinds of mechanisms for us to actually know these kinds of things? It's not just so. In this entire school with these 2 campuses and 5 schools each, like 10 total schools, and thousands of students, there are like a dozen of these digital literacy coaches. And we start seeing a change first with Sam, and then in the following year, Sam and Susan, and also another digital literacy coach in another school subsection. So it can be spreading in this way. We also see that, I don't think I mentioned it there, that Sam also gets another role. So this reification is a very slow process.
So what I'm trying to say is, you may not need to argue about the role as a reification. You see what I mean? Because the role changes itself is a good, argument for, for the change already. Because the role itself, you've illustrated the different structures, the different mechanisms, and so on. So reification is something else. If they had, say, for example, they had a different curriculum, say, in one sense, they must have other more proper reification in the sense that, say, for example, before there were these IT lessons,
yes.
And now they don't have IT lessons.
Yes.
But then they must have some curricular changes in
yes.
integrating it. And through this change, they must have produced things like curriculum, guides, resources. So I think those are the kinds of things that we tend to refer to as reification. That's my understanding.
And not job description.
Job descriptions, if it become public. So say, for example, if the job description is laid out for public debate and discussion, then I would say it's a reification.
Okay. So there's some idea of transparency and being public.
Because the reification is an artifact which is supposed to be able to, it has a life of its own.
Mm.
Okay, so reifications have a life of its own.
Yes.
And so it's just like, say, for example, an iPhone. Now, an iPhone, of course, it captures a lot of Steve Jobs' ideas about, what, personal computing or whatever should be.
Yes.
Okay, so he might have a lot of thoughts about it, but then having this in the form of an artifact, then the artifact travels.
Yes.
He doesn't need to travel. The artifact travels.
Yes.
The traveling of the artifact, on the one hand, of course, spreads some of that idea, but it's also but it is not exactly the same as the original idea.
Okay.
Because different people can take on this artifact and do different things with it. So the reification is more it's that kind of thing. It's an artifact that has some form of autonomy. It goes about.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. It's very curious that you mentioned this thing about job descriptions because, okay, I can understand that if a reified product is public and transparent, then the job description is not actually a reified product. In Scarlett's case, she has a job description too. She borrowed it from her previous school, and it was not public or transparent either. I just had that kind of thought. I was like, wow, that's very curious too. That's something that she and Sam have in common.
So,
well, I just wanted to add, because reification was a very interesting term that also I was reading last year, and to me the understanding is that it's not good. I don't like to look for the reification, because reification is completely different from change and from be dynamic. When something is stopped, it's reified. It's like made on a stone, and that's it. That's the end, and no more. So I had that understanding of this term, the reification. So I say, try to avoid reification because change is continuous. Change is not a thing. Change is a process. It's not a thing, because the thingness is the reification.
Okay.
It's just stop it and die, no more.
Yes, I have a different understanding of reification, and we can view reification as like a snapshot. It's like a picture at one time. But also, reification is, per Wenger's definition, something that just organizes and congeals an experience. So, for example, in this meeting, I mean, even I feel like the notes that I'm taking are part of the reification process. We're negotiating meaning. I'm meaning right now about my research, and I'm taking notes, and that's a part of the reification. It organizes some of the negotiation that's going on and congeals it.
So maybe we can go back and look at this private-public nature.
Yes.
Okay.
That's very curious.
So maybe we can review it, but definitely, well, Sivanka, you're right. Reifications is casting something in some form.
Yes.
In some form. But I think that is important. I mean, okay, if it's cast in stone, I mean, even a stone can be recast.
Yes.
Right?
But I think.
But then, if you okay, it's how do we come to a consolidation of how do we agree on? So what have we agreed on? Say you have some discussion. So how do we know what has changed? Okay, so it